Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. And warm welcome to everybody. Warm welcome to you, wherever you are in the world listening, whether you're listening to us here live in this moment or you're listening to the recording. And I am so thrilled to be with you and to share with you my journey of compassion. And I'll start with a question. Have you ever considered your human values? What are your values, or what are the virtues that guide your life and your decisions, that drive your interactions with others and drive pretty much every action in your life? So for me, compassion is one of my core values, and I am absolutely convinced that compassion as a collective core value throughout the whole world will absolutely transform our world. I'm convinced of this. And unless have been living in a cave, I'm pretty sure you can look around in the world around you. You could turn on the news in any moment, go onto social media, and really look around and see that there's a huge, huge need for compassion in our world. There's a lot of separation, a lot of fear, and a lot of discord, essentially. And for me, when I this need for compassion, what I mean by that is that compassion is this love with understanding. That imagine a world where every person is realizing that they are an embodiment of love, that love is their essence and is something that radiates from them. And from that place, we can look at others with understanding. That we are empathy in action. That even we can look at another that we fundamentally disagree with and still have love, be in love, and acknowledge or accept that their different views, their different values, or whatever it is. And because there's a shift that's happening on the world right now, and I know we can look around and think it's chaotic, that everything is collapsing. But what's really happening is that there is this huge, huge shift that's occurring. We're moving from living in this fear-based paradigm where fear is what drives a lot of what we do, a lot of what we say, a lot of how we react and respond to the world. And we're moving into this paradigm of love. And love isn't always this soft, meek, or, I don't know about you, but me growing up in Ireland, in Catholic Ireland, my views of love were not what I've come to learn true love to be, which it can be a whole spectrum of qualities and emotions. But what is the essence, and what I know when I know that I'm in a love-based state, is that there's expansion, that I can allow my body to be soft, versus when there's fear or some sort of fear-based energy like judgment or insecurity or whatever, that there's, when maybe you can even feel as I'm sharing this, there's some sort of contraction or holding or somewhere in your body or in the pit of your stomach or somewhere. So love is this expansion and openness and compassion as a love with understanding, as a quality of love, a love-based quality. And on the other hand, the fear and the judgment that is often, judgment is often a barrier to compassion. The Dalai Lama says that we need compassion and human affection, not only to survive, but that these qualities are the ultimate sources of success in our lives. So what does that even mean? Compassion, human affection, and caring, kindness as a success for life. It would make you wonder if we're even living in the paradigm where this is even a possibility. And so for myself and my journey, and what I'll be sharing with you about my journey with compassion. So as an academic myself, I work at a university, at a UNESCO research center, and, as a disability and human rights advocate. I'm also a spiritual aspirant, and I've dedicated my life to serving humanity in whatever way I can, in using my skills and my service. And so inside of all of this, compassion is a topic that is very, very close to my heart and to my mind. And it's something that I have on numerous times in my life made a commitment to be a total embodiment of. And I must share with you that I have made many, many mistakes as I've stumbled along this path of what compassion actually is, what true compassion is, and what that looks like in my life. So it has taken me anyway, some humility inside of this path as well. And as much as I have learned about what compassion is, I have also learned a lot about what compassion is not. So, for example, in the beginning, I confused compassion with helping and wanting to fix others. And at times, there's even times in my life where I've enabled others, I've enabled unhealthy behaviors, I've even enabled abuse that was directed at me, even all under this false misunderstanding of what compassion is, all under this umbrella of trying to help or fix people. And this suite of behaviors, patterns, is often described as codependent behavior patterns. And of course, being inside of the suite of behavior patterns, I often used to attract people then who would take advantage of me, or, you know, in times even abuse me physically, and all under this misconception of what compassion actually is. I feel like I could almost write the book of misconceptions about compassion. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit, maybe some of my journey, something may resonate with you, or maybe even potentially inspire you in some way. And so coming back to what compassion actually is. So for me, and what I've learned is that it's love with understanding. It's tenderness. It's empathy in action. It's really a kindness and a caring for yourself, for others, for humanity as a whole. And as I was saying shortly a while ago, you know, one of the major lessons that I had was that compassion is not sympathy. It's not this helping or fixing others, the people in my life. That it's really about acceptance, accepting what is inside of myself, and accepting others, even if I fundamentally disagree with them, or even if I truly believe that I have a solution to their problem, which, you know, as you may even hear, is still inside of that helping, fixing paradigm. And I must add, as a disclaimer, so the role that I played in my family growing up, I was that helper, fixer person, so much so that my youngest sister used to even call me her other mother. So I share that to give some context for how this misconception came up for me, and how it was just almost a natural progression or a mistake that I would have gone down in my learning what compassion is. And maybe if you found yourself playing a similar role in your family, this may resonate with you. Or maybe if you find yourself surrounded by people all the time who are always needing you, or, you know, that there's something in the boundaries there, this may resonate with you. So my first lesson, the first major lesson is, so my older sister, she developed MS, multiple sclerosis, which is a progressive neurological condition, and it affects people in many different ways. So she had a very aggressive form of this condition, and she had a really difficult time accepting this diagnosis. From that first session with her neurologist, she absolutely refused all medical support or medical intervention in any way, up until the week before she died, actually. And she refused to use a wheelchair, even for years after, when she actually needed one. Nobody in the family was allowed to even mention MS. It was just, it just wasn't safe to mention, you know. And so you kind of get the picture. And of course, in the early days, so I lived next to her, and of course, me being the helper, the fixer, I put on my cape and I got to business, and I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be great. It's perfect. I can just be helping her, da 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 da. So I used to go in and give her a hand with some things, and, you know, stuff that she just basic support around the home, around the house, and shopping and things like that. And as much as she wanted and needed the support, I triggered her immensely, and I really couldn't understand why. And it was really difficult and painful for me, because I was in this fixer helper person. I was totally unconscious about patterns. I was totally unconscious about that there was really no other way for me to be at that time, because that was just the way it was. Maybe, I don't know, wherever you are in your journey of self-development, you might recall a time in your life where it just was the way it was. There was no other way of being. And so this was quite painful for me, and it took me a while to realize, and maybe even kind of in retrospect, I got the point where I realized that, oh, she obviously she had her own stuff going on. I'm not denying that for 1 second, but she could sense that I felt sorry for her, and she just did not want that in her. She just didn't want to be around that, and I understand that now. And I really drove her crazy, to the point that she just asked me to leave her alone. So she just cut me out, and so that was really difficult for me, as you can imagine, being this helper, this fixer kind of a person. And there's my sister needing support, needing help, and she just didn't want it. So it was a major turning point in my life. And so I honored her request. I had the awareness to realize, this is what she really wants. And if I really do love her, it's not about me, to honor her request. So I went away. I committed to myself to heal myself, the aspects of myself. There was a lot of pain obviously coming up, and I committed to working on myself so that I could truly be able to support. And truly, I was asking myself this question of, what is real love here? What is real compassion here? And starting to see that, oh, somewhere inside of me, that my ego is being triggered here. So maybe it's not all about her. And so this was really when my journey of compassion went to the next level. So I had to really reflect deeply on that aspect of my ego, that the helper. And I came to see that, that there's subconsciously, in this helper mode, there was a sense of self-importance. I had to be really humble with myself and say, what am I getting out of being this helper? And I realized that I felt there was a part of me that felt important. I had this need to be needed, and that was what was being satisfied. So when she didn't want my help anymore, what was I left with? So I had an opportunity to really work on myself, and step out of this pattern, and to realize that this was a pattern. And later that I learned that what this pattern was actually fueled. So that my way of being was, oh, I'm a helper. And this was how I hid this fear that I had underneath, that if I'm not the helper, I'll be invisible. I could be rejected. And if I go back to where this pattern came in the family, it was a large family, a lot going on. If I'm not the helper fixer, what if I'm not seen? Maybe my whole survival was threatened in a subconscious way. And so at the same time, I was in college, and my path was taking a direction towards working with people with disabilities. And I was very much aware at the time that what was playing out with my sister was also, it was teaching me this distinction between helping and support, and considering that she had a disability, and as well, or she was developing, how her functional limitations were what are often perceived as a disability. I had an opportunity to reflect on the whole paradigm around disability, and how that I was coming from this place of ableism, of, okay, someone with a disability, that she needed help. And so that as long as I was the helper, I had the power, like as if, as the helper, the able one, putting myself, and as what we do as society, putting ourselves on the pedestal, and then dishing out charity or help to the person that needs it, as if there's something wrong with them, or as something that they need to be pitied or felt sorry for. And not to say that they don't need support, or they don't have challenges or limitations, but that, somebody can still need support, and for equity. But once those supports are, even if those supports are there or not, that we're all equal, that we're all of the same value, of each person as a being has the same potential. And realizing that this, whereas the help, that's what that is, the discrepancy with the power, as long as the person with the power, or the helper, has all of the control. But when we're really seeing each other as equal, and we're actually supporting the person that we're wanting to support rather than help, that's empowering, and that we really have to accept their choice. And so that was really the lesson was there. And I can see that reflected in the broader paradigm in terms of how people in many places around the world still see disability. Often there's this charity model or deficits model of there's something wrong with. And we see people with pity, or we often patronize them, but there's no empowerment in that. We're not seeing each person as a soul with full potential. And so for myself, it was a really humbling moment in my life, or a humbling time in my life, as I was saying, because I really had to get present with my own programming, my own unconscious bias around disability and support, but also on top of that, my need to be needed. And so when I really got present to all of this, and to my judgment that I had in relation to my sister's choices, I found it was really hard for me to accept her choices around not having any medical intervention, or, it was difficult for me to accept her denial around that she had MS in the first place, and that it was actually progressing. And even the subconscious judging around her circumstances as, oh, there's something bad here, feeling sorry for her. And as long as I became aware that as long as I was judging her choices, judging her denial, I didn't have to feel the excruciating pain of coming to terms with her mortality, and all of our mortality, but her mortality. I could see that her physical functioning was in decline. I could see how scared she was, and I loved her dearly. And I could see that, while in the meantime, she was making choices that were making it even more difficult for her. And this was excruciating, and I really had to feel all of this pain, to be able to fully accept her circumstances, that maybe her circumstances were so hard for her to accept that she couldn't accept them. Maybe it was too much for her, and to really step into her shoes with empathy, with compassion, empathy in action, this compassion, and fully accept and support her choices, and to become okay with that. And this was what I had to do. And it was absolutely heartbreaking. I felt like my heart was in the shredder. And at the same time, inside of all of this pain, because as long as I was judging her, as long as I had, judgments about, oh, I wish she'd just come out of denial, it's da 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 da, I didn't have to go there. But then when I had to go there, the agonizing pain of that. But on the other side, I realized inside of that heartbreak and getting really present to it, my heart and my capacity to love and for compassion expanded and expanded beyond anything I had ever experienced, or beyond anything I could have even imagined. And this compassion began to ripple out into every area of my life. It was something that began to emerge from my heart. And it really shifted everything inside of me. It shifted how I see other people. It allows me to even still have compassion for others. Whereas up until that point, there was a resistance of the uncomfortable emotions, the painful ones. And as this shift emerged inside of myself, and more acceptance of my sister, it did shift our relationship as well. Of course, naturally it had to. I didn't see her still as much as I would have liked. She still wanted her space, but I got okay with that. There was an actual freedom that emerged, and it was a true love, actually. When we did meet, there was respect there. There was compassion, and she did allow me to support her. Say if ever we went out for a family, if we went out to a restaurant or family get-togethers, she knew that given that I was working with people with disabilities and I knew how to support, I had a lot of experience supporting people with activities of daily living and mobility and such, that it was me that she would ask to help her. And I can remember in those moments, there was never any, I can recall the distinction from before when it was like, oh, I'm helping, I'm fixing her, to in those moments being with her. I can remember just the love that was there. I just loved her so much to be able to be with her and to support her in a way that she needed. And I feel that love for her even right now as I share this. To be able to express love through action. And that was really compassion in action in my experience. And even up to the point where when she died and being with her throughout, I was so present to the love that was there and the peace and the caring that was there between us and the tenderness. And that it was okay. The judgment was gone. It was pure, pure love. And this experience of humanity, of this is the most human experience on the planet. We all go through the death process, and it's something that's so much avoided and resisted, even conversations around it, because it's painful and, we don't know how to deal with it. But I have to say, in my life, it was one of the most profound, peaceful, loving experiences, even though it was heartbreaking. There was a lot of pain, there was tenderness, and it's the humanity, and so that was my major. And I can thank my sister Karen for really my soul's journey and my human journey in terms of compassion in my life. And it didn't end there. I still had to learn more about compassion. But, from that experience and from that real human experience, even in terms of my career, I was able to, and I do embed the true teachings of compassion and real empowerment into training programs that I now lead and facilitate in terms of teaching people how to include people with disabilities respectfully and in an empowering way. And coming back to the compassion, there was still more to learn in my journey of compassion. I still needed to learn discernment in relationships. I still had to learn the discerning between compassion. I still had to ask myself, is this true compassion here? Is this helping? Really having to work to transmute that old pattern, the fixer helper pattern, that was fueled, as I was saying, fueled by this fear of being unworthy, being insecure, or being invisible. And I learned this pattern, this method of seeing my behavior patterns and the patterns in my personality in this kind of more energetic, esoteric way from my teacher, Her Holiness Sai Ma. And she taught me how to, identify the pattern of how it plays out in my life, and then how to look underneath that to see what is the fear that's fueling this pattern, and then to really get present to it, to feel that energy as this is an energy that I'm going about my whole life trying to avoid feeling. Maybe what will happen if I actually feel it fully and bring it into my heart, welcoming it into the compassion, the love and understanding inside of my own heart, and allowing it to dissolve in there. And from there, then actually activating a higher frequency energy like compassion. And that was in this case, activating compassion or any other love-based energy or quality, and then bringing that to life inside of my field. How does it feel to be compassion? And using the power of the imagination, then this higher faculty of the mind, to actually imagine what it would look like to interact with people in this new energy of compassion. In those instances where before the old pattern was active, what might it look like to be compassion now in this new instance? And really activating all, getting so real and present to what that feels, what it looks like inside of my field. And so to bring it all to this whole journey of compassion, and through my own personal sharing, my journey, I hope there's been some nuggets of information or nuggets of resonance in there for you, and to summarize what compassion is for me is it's this love with understanding. There's an open-heartedness, a tenderness, kindness. It's this pure love where there's no judgment. And compassion, it's about being able to meet others in their difficulty, in their pain, without trying to change anything, without trying to talk them out of it, without trying to guide them to somewhere else. But there's an extension of your heart to theirs in a way that effortlessly can raise the energy, raise the frequency of the situation, can lift the person up. But it requires a lot of self-development, or some self-development. It requires us to be able to be comfortable inside of our own painful emotions, so that then being able to feel fully our uncomfortable emotions, rather than when we're in the resistance. I don't want to feel this uncomfortable emotion, so we shut that off, which means then we also have to shut off the other. I can't be available for them because they're triggering this pain inside of me that I haven't actually dealt with. Or sometimes they may not be even triggering a pain of something that's happened. They may be triggering, this person has been through something. Maybe they've, I don't know, had a miscarriage or had a death in their family, and that's something I'm really afraid of happening. So they're triggering that fear inside of me. So rather than feeling that fear and welcoming that into my heart, we shut that off, which means we also have to shut off the other. And so that is a really, really important aspect of the journey of compassion, that we can feel our emotions fully. And inside of that, having self-compassion for ourselves, it requires compassion. And when we're inside of this embodiment of compassion, it becomes a way of being. There is no distinction between self and the other. When we have this level of self-awareness inside of self, we have this awareness of, there's something uncomfortable inside of me. There's something that I'm feeling in my intuition, or we can discern between what is real intuition because there's an expansion, or what is a fear because there's the contraction. And so to bring this all to a close, I invite you to contemplate for yourself. Are there any are there any emotions that you fear experiencing that limit your capacity to be compassionate? And this is something you can do now, or you can even do later. Maybe something might emerge straight away. Maybe it might be something you need to sit with and really, really contemplate. And even to consider, how can you cultivate compassion inside of yourself? What might it look like for you to be an embodiment of compassion? What is your flavor of compassion in your life? And so inside of that, as we bring this practice to a close, we bring this session to a close, I invite you, even for a few seconds, to take a deep breath into your heart, to allow yourself to feel the fullness, the love with understanding for yourself that is always there, waiting to be called on, waiting to be activated, waiting to emerge and to hold you and support you in your life. And so with that, I bring my story, my sharing, my journey with compassion to a close. And I really hope that this has been of service to you, and to share with you that I do lead some practices, some guided meditations, free practices each week. They're available on the Awaken Life platform, awakenlife.love. And so there's 2 specific meditations I currently lead that are very much related to compassion, related to the heart. One is using the compass, activating the compass of your heart. And the other is creating heart and brain coherence. And so allowing, activating your heart and allowing it to emerge. So thank you for your time. It's been an absolute joy to be with you and to share with you.